On Christmas morning, while the world outside my frosted window glowed with pine lights and quiet joy, my phone buzzed with a bank alert that sliced straight through the holiday stillness. A charge of $19,600 had posted to my credit card. I stared at the numbers as though they might rearrange themselves into something sane, something human, something less impossible. My card lay untouched in my wallet across the room. My heat flickered. My breath tightened. Then, before I could even pull up the details, a text from Lily flashed on my lock screen, a picture of her wrapped in a plush white robe, lounging beside an infinity pool captioned, "Merry Christmas," from my luxury retreat. Moments later, a video from my parents arrived. My mother waved a mimosa in the air and shouted, "Your sister deserves this more than you ever would." My father added, laughing, "Relax, Tessa. You make good money. We'll enjoy your little gift." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just sat there staring at the Christmas tree I decorated alone and understood something with quiet razor clarity. This was no accident. This was entitlement weaponized, and it wasn't the first time. But it would be the last. The notification expanded beneath my thumb. Palm Shore Luxury Retreat Premium Package, 4 guests, full spa, upgrades, private excursions. My living room dimmed around me as if all the years of swallowing their disrespect finally pressed in at once. I had spent years, decades, being the daughter who bent but didn't break. The daughter who paid, who understood, who forgave. The daughter who held the family together while they tore pieces of me off like it was their right. And now they'd used nearly $20,000 of my money without a moment's hesitation, without warning, without shame. I opened the retreat's website and the shimmering images of sunlit pools and eucalyptus steam mocked me. Beneath the booking details was a single forged signature, my own name scribbled with my mother's impatience. I felt a familiar ache rise in my chest, the same one I'd felt 100 times before when I paid Lily's college deposits after she dropped out twice. When my parents moved into my condo just for a few months and refused to leave. When birthdays and holidays became obligations, not celebrations. A new message arrived, a group video call. Against better judgment, I answered. Lily's face filled the screen, first glowing with filters and self-satisfaction. "Tess, isn't it gorgeous? They upgraded us because Mom told them you'd cover it." Behind her, my mother adjusted her sunglasses. "Stop acting surprised. You never use your vacation days anyway." My father leaned into framed cheeks flushed from wine. "Think of this as helping your sister's future. She's launching a whole new brand after this retreat. It's an investment. An investment. Using my credit card without permission. On Christmas." I ended the call mid-laugh, mid-excuse, mid-justification. The sound cut and my apartment fell so silent I could hear the faint hum of my refrigerator. I sat there for a long moment, letting the truth settle like cold ash. They didn't see me. They never had. They saw what I could give. And this year they expected me to give until I disappeared entirely. I stood and walked to my window watching snow drift beneath the yellow street lamp outside. Somewhere in another city, families were sharing meals, exchanging gifts, maybe arguing in that ordinary way families do. But even on the quietest nights of my childhood, I had never felt part of something whole. Lily had always been the golden one, bright, fragile, adored. And I had been the foundation they walked on without ever noticing the strain. Another alert chimed. A second pending charge appeared, thousands more for post-retreat integration coaching. I swallowed, feeling my heartbeat slow rather than spike. Numbness was no longer collapse, it was strategy forming. I crossed the room, grabbed my laptop, and typed Palm Shore Luxury Retreat fraud complaints. Search results flooded the screen. Lawsuits, investigations, hidden fees, manipulative coaching methods. Reports of families encouraged to reassign legacy assets to their highest potential member. My breath caught. Highest potential member. Lily. My family hadn't just drained me. They were being guided, pushed into something calculated. A knock sounded from somewhere inside my memory, the countless times I'd been told, "You're strong, Tessa. You don't need as much as your sister. Or, be mature. Let Lily shine. Or the worst of all, it's just easier if you pay for it. Not this time. I closed my laptop slowly, deliberately. The snow outside thickened, blanketing the world in white, and in the quiet glow of my small apartment, something in me finally shifted, something long overdue, something sharp and clear. If they wanted to treat me like a resource, they were about to learn what happened when the resource cut them off. This Christmas wouldn't end the way they expected. It would end the way I decided. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out of a shallow haze, replaying my family's voices until the words lost shape. By morning, the holiday lights outside my window looked dimmer, like they'd burned through the last of their warmth. I wrapped myself in a sweater, made coffee I barely tasted, and opened my laptop again. Not out of shock now, but determination. If they were reckless enough to use my credit card, I needed to know what else they'd touched. The first clue arrived in the form of an email, one sent at 3:30 in the morning, time-stamped right after they landed in Florida for the retreat. The subject line read, "Charge authorization confirmation." I clicked it. My heart clenched, but not from surprise anymore. The signature at the bottom was mine. Except it wasn't. It leaned too far left. It wavered. It was my mother's attempt at mimicking my handwriting, the same way she used to forge late notes for Lily in high school. I zoomed in closer, studying every jagged loop. I could almost hear her voice saying, "Relax, Tess." We did what we had to do. The entitlement was so thick it felt like smoke in my throat. Another message popped up. This one from my credit card fraud department. Suspicious activity detected. Please review. I clicked through submission details, breathing slowly, carefully. 3 pending charges, all tied to the same company, Palm Shore Wellness Group. And the notes section, family empowerment package. Additional guest add-on. 4 guests. They'd even brought someone else. Likely Lily's boyfriend, the one who never kept a job more than 6 weeks, but always seemed to appear when free vacations were involved. I leaned back in my chair, the room tilting slightly around me. A new awareness settled in, harder and colder than shock. My parents did not hesitate. They did not feel guilty. They did not even consider that what they were doing was wrong. Because to them, my life had always been a resource. The realization didn't break me. It steadied me. I picked up my phone, dialing the retreat's general number. When a syrupy voice answered, I forced calm into my tone. "Hi, I'm calling about a charge on my card. I'm trying to confirm who authorized it." "Oh yes," the woman chirped. "Your family is already enjoying the transformation sessions?" "So you know who I am?" I asked quietly. A pause. "Just a beat too long." "Of course," she said, voice smoothing. "We have all your information on file." I hadn't given them anything. I pressed harder. "Did someone give my name as financial guarantor?" Another long pause. Her voice dropped into rehearsed warmth. "These are private family matters. We encourage open-hearted communication." I hung up. My pulse thudded in my fingertips. Open-hearted communication. That line was straight from a cult handbook. I typed Palm Shore Wellness complaints into my browser, and the results unfurled like a trap snapping open. Threads on message boards. Whistleblower comments. A family who lost their savings. A woman who said her mother handed over property after a breakthrough session. Reports of forged authorizations. Coaching scripts to reassign family resources. Something twisted inside me, a coil pulling tighter and tighter. They were being manipulated. And they were letting themselves be manipulated because it fed a narrative they already believed Lily was the chosen one, and I was the support beam beneath her feet. My phone buzzed, another text from my mother. A photo of Lily at a beachfront brunch. My mother's caption read, "Your sister deserves the world. You should be proud to invest in her success." Invest. That was the word she loved. Not love, not gratitude, not fairness. Invest. As though I were a silent partner in a company I never agreed to fund. I stood pacing the apartment. Every step fueled the slow burn under my ribs. I remembered birthdays where Lily received diamond earrings while I got self-help books. College years where I worked 2 jobs, and they sent Lily spending money for self-care. I remembered the day I bought my house, my one triumph, and she laughed, saying, "Guess I'm moving in. I call the bigger closet." I remembered how they nodded. And now, this retreat. This scam. This crossing of a line I didn't even know was still intact. The truth settled with a cold electric clarity. They weren't just using me. They were preparing to cut me out entirely. I returned to my laptop, opening a fresh document. If they wanted to treat me like an afterthought, they were about to feel what it meant to be outside the world they thought they controlled. I copied every fraudulent authorization email, every charge confirmation, every time-stamped message. I took screenshots of Lily's posts flaunting luxury I paid for. I organized everything into folders labeled evidence. Then, as if fate wanted to underline the moment a new notification appeared on my screen, failed login attempt using your account. Location Palm Shore Retreat. My breath stilled. They weren't done. But neither was I. I sat down, spine-straightening fingers hovering above my keyboard as something fierce, something long suppressed, clicked into place. If they wanted to build a future without me, then I would remove myself, starting with the one thing they took for granted. My house. The one I paid for. The one they believed was theirs. I whispered into the quiet room, steady and sure. This time I'm not cleaning up your mess. I'm ending it. The morning after Christmas tasted like cold air and resolve. I brewed coffee. I barely touched the steam rising in soft curls as I sat at my table with my laptop open, staring at the house listing for my own property, the one my parents had treated like a community resource for years. Seeing my address displayed like any ordinary home on the market sent a strange tremor through me. Fear, maybe. Freedom. Definitely. My name was still the only one on the deed, but all the ways they had used that house to erase me echoed with every click of my mouse. I refreshed my email and found a reply from the county clerk, short but direct. Call me when you can. There are inconsistencies with the documents submitted. My stomach tightened. I dialed immediately. The clerk answered with a warm but cautious tone, the kind used by people who handle sensitive information every day. When I confirmed my identity, she cleared her throat and said, "Miss Marlowe, someone attempted to file a preliminary transfer document for your property. The issue is, your signature appears on it. Twice." I closed my eyes. Not shock. Recognition. "Is it valid?" I asked. "No," she said. "It's clearly copied from an earlier deed. Sloppy work, to be honest." She paused. "But if someone is trying to move your property without your knowledge, you should take this very seriously." I thanked her and ended the call, letting the silence stretch. There were moments in your life when truth hovered over you like a shadow, waiting for you to acknowledge it. This was one of them. My parents weren't just careless. They weren't just entitled. They were planning something. And it involved removing me completely. A soft chime broke through my thoughts. A text from an unknown number appeared. "Check the upstairs closet. They have drafts. Don't wait." My heart kicked once hard. My apartment felt suddenly smaller, the air thinner. I stared at the message. Someone knew what was happening. Someone was warning me. But who? Before I could spiral, a notification banner appeared. Palm Shore Retreat had posted new holiday memories. Against my better judgment, I opened it. There they were, my parents and Lily, wrapped in spa towels and smiling like winners. My father held a glass of champagne. My mother draped a robe over Lily's shoulders as though dressing a queen. Lily captioned the photo, "New Year, New Legacy." "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for believing in me." Legacy. The word twisted inside me. They weren't just enjoying themselves. They were celebrating their future, one that somehow didn't include me. I set my phone aside and grabbed my coat. The cold air outside bit into my cheeks, but it kept me focused. I drove toward the house with a single purpose: find whatever they were hiding. Find what they thought would secure Lily's place as heir and erase me from my own property. The neighborhood looked peaceful as always. Snow-laced roofs, wreaths on every door, kids dragging sleds across icy sidewalks. My house sat in the middle like it belonged to someone else already. They had filled it with their taste, their presence, their assumptions. But it was mine. Legally, financially, fundamentally, mine. As I stepped inside with my key, the familiar scent of lavender plug-ins hit me, the ones my mother insisted on using, even though they gave me headaches. The living room looked staged, almost. Not for buyers, but for visitors, for neighbors, for the story they'd spun about, who lived here and who didn't. I walked down the hall straight to the upstairs landing, where the closet door waited at the end. A sleek, new padlock clung to it, shiny and smug. They had locked the one place I never checked. Why? And why recently? I crouched, running my fingers lightly over the hinges. Fresh scratches marked the metal. Someone had changed this lock within days. Maybe hours. I pressed my ear against the wood, and for a moment there was nothing. Then faint and mechanical, the fading whir of a motor, like a shredder slowing down. My pulse jumped. I stood quickly, swallowing hard. Someone had been here. Recently. Maybe even while they were out of town. And they were destroying something. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Hurry, it's not just papers. I backed away from the door, adrenaline sharp in my veins. Not just papers. What else could they be hiding? Financial records, forged signatures, coaching scripts from that retreat. Something worse. I walked into my old bedroom now, a makeshift shrine to Lily. Clothing racks filled the walls, makeup palettes littered the dresser. A ring light stood tall in the corner, pointed at a full-length mirror. A note taped to the mirror read, "Manifestation begins here. Step into your role." My fists clenched at my sides. This room wasn't for me. It never had been. Everything in this house had bent around Lily's wants, her goals, her image, and they expected me to maintain it like a caretaker. I moved to the master bedroom, formerly mine, now my mother's meditation space. Blankets folded perfectly, crystals arranged as though she'd summoned some spiritual authority. A binder sat on the nightstand labeled Marlowe Family Vision Plan. Inside were printed pages filled with bullet points titled Short-Term Transition and Asset Alignment. Under Lily's name were notes like Primary Beneficiary House Brand, Generational Pathway. Next to mine, Self-Sufficient. Will adapt. The familiar ache in my chest deepened, but it didn't break me. It fueled me. I photographed every page, every room, every lie they'd built in my absence. Then I stepped back into the hall and stared at the locked closet again, the air humming with what I didn't yet know. This wasn't just a house anymore, it was evidence. And whoever had sent that anonymous text, they wanted me to find the truth before it disappeared. I tightened my scarf, whispered to myself, "You want a new legacy, Lily. Let's see how much truth you can stand." Then I turned and walked out, leaving the locked door behind for now, but not for long. I drove home with the image of that locked closet burning in my mind. By the time I reached my apartment, the snow had thickened across the pavement, softening the world into white silence. But inside me there was nothing soft. Only sharp edges and calculations. I hung my coat, sat at my small kitchen table, and opened my laptop again. If they were hiding something in that closet, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I started with the retreat. Palm Shore, luxury retreat complaints, I typed, and the results populated instantly. Lawsuits, fraud accusations, victims warning others about manipulative coaching pressure to reassign assets, financial guardianship shifts. One review caught my breath. They encouraged us to leave behind toxic family members and redirect all resources to the highest potential heir. Became extremely pushy about property transfers. My chest tightened. Words I had heard Lily parrot in the past few months echoed back to me. Some people support greatness, others achieve it. Legacy requires clarity. Your house is too much responsibility for just you. I had dismissed them as Lily's usual self-centered chatter, but now I saw something else phrases planted in her rehearsed design. I clicked deeper into a forum thread titled "The Shadow Behind Palm Shore, Dr. Rowan Hale." A dozen anonymous comments described the same man, a self-proclaimed wealth alignment coach, promising to help families unlock their generational destiny. Each review felt like a puzzle piece snapping into place. One person wrote, "He told my daughter she was meant to carry the family legacy. Convinced my wife I was holding her back. Nearly cost us our home." I froze. Lily had mentioned a coach named Rowan during Thanksgiving, a person who told her she had the potential to become a brand. I remembered her saying it with a glow she'd never had before. My parents had encouraged it too, laughing, praising her ambition while ignoring the exhaustion behind my smile. A sudden urge pushed me to call the retreat. A man answered this time. Calm, smooth, almost too gentle. Palm Shore Wellness Group. How may I support your journey today? I have a question about a charge on my account, I said. A very large one. He hummed like he was savoring the moment. Of course, Miss Marlowe. Your parents and sister have been incredible participants. Truly transformative progress. I stiffened. I didn't give you my name. Silence. Then he clicked off the call without a goodbye. Cold pricked up my spine. They knew me. They were tracking my responses, and they expected me to fold just like my family always did. I opened my banking app again, scanning recent activity. 3 new pending charges. Thousands more. Partnership coaching, advanced leadership tier, wellness alignment materials. I inhaled sharply. They were escalating, and they were doing it under my name. My phone buzzed. An email notification. Another urgent advisory from the retreat. I deleted it unopened. The next hour blurred into a quiet storm of clicking keys, documented screenshots, and mounting evidence. I wasn't spiraling. I was assembling, extracting patterns, mapping the truth. If my family was slipping under the influence of a predatory coach, I needed clarity before taking any drastic steps. But clarity came from somewhere I didn't expect. A missed call notification appeared. The county clerk. My breath caught as I called back. Miss Marlowe. She said I took a closer look at that file you asked about. Her voice shifted into something that felt like warning. Someone scheduled a courier drop-off for modified ownership documents. The appointment is set for the evening your parents return. My pulse quickened. Who requested it? An advisor listed as R. Hale. Rowan Hale. He wasn't a coach. He wasn't a guide. He was orchestrating everything from the retreat to the forged signatures to the closet filled with documents. I whispered, "Thank you," hung up the phone, and sat there in the dim kitchen light, feeling all the pieces lock into place. They weren't just using me. They were planning to erase me. I stood, grabbed my journal, and flipped to a blank page. My handwriting stayed steady as I wrote, "If they want to remove me, they'll have to do it without the house." A message pinged on my phone. Unknown number again. They changed the lock yesterday. Don't wait. My breath shook as I slid my notebook aside. Whoever was warning me knew too much. But for the moment, their information was the only thing keeping me ahead. I walked to my bookshelf and pulled down my old forensic accounting manual's leftovers from a job I once interned for. Old skills I never thought I'd use again flared back to life. Paper trails, digital fingerprints, motive frameworks. I wasn't just a victim in this. I had tools, and I was done pretending I didn't know how to use them. I opened my laptop again and searched for Dr. Rowan Hale, Ohio presence. A local business registry listing popped up. He'd been operating in the state for 6 months. 6 months, the same timeline, Lily started changing. My stomach tightened. This wasn't spontaneous. This was targeted. I walked to the window and looked out at the snow settling on the empty street below. My breath fogged the glass. I whispered into the cold air, "You think I won't fight? You're wrong." When I turned back, my phone buzzed with one more message from the unknown number. "Someone else is watching the house." The words chilled me more than the winter air ever could. But they didn't stop me. They fueled me. By the time I pulled into the driveway of my house, the sky was a pale, unforgiving gray. The kind that made the air feel thin, as if the world itself were bracing for bad news. I stepped out of the car with a steadiness I didn't entirely recognize. It wasn't confidence, not exactly. It was purpose. A cold, deliberate purpose that had been building inside me since Christmas morning. If they wanted to rewrite my future, I needed to learn exactly what story they were crafting without me. I unlocked the door and stepped into the quiet house. The lavender scent hit me immediately, the same one my mother insisted on diffusing, even though it gave me migraines. It made the house feel like a stranger's space, not mine. I stood still for a moment, letting the silence press in around me. This place had always been a battlefield disguised as a home. Today, I wasn't the casualty. I was the investigator. I went straight to the kitchen where papers were scattered across the table. A folder sat open labeled in my mother's neat handwriting, "Marlowe Legacy Plan, Revised." The word legacy made my jaw tighten. I slid into a chair and started flipping through the pages. The first sheet was a to-do list. Finalize wellness brand launch for Lily. Confirm refinance approval. Advisor Hale meeting after retreat. Prepare guest rooms for investors visiting January. At the bottom, circled, twice, Tessa must not interfere this time. I stared at the words until they blurred. Not interfere. As though my entire life had been a series of interruptions to their plans for Lily. As though I were a barrier, not a daughter. I took out my phone and snapped photos of every page. Facts first. Strategy later. The router sat on a small shelf near the pantry. An impulse urged me toward it. I logged in and opened the admin page. The device list was longer than I expected. Laptops, tablets, phones, and an unfamiliar device labeled Hale Consult. My breath stilled. I clicked through activity logs, uploads to the county recorder's office, downloads of legal forms, multiple attempts to authenticate documents using a copied digital signature. No, not copied. Stolen. I recognized the loop of my name lifted from an old mortgage document pasted into new forms. I swallowed hard. The room seemed to darken around me as I scrolled further. Someone had been pushing hard to reshape ownership of my house, and they weren't even subtle. I grabbed my phone and dialed Attorney Bennett. He picked up on the second ring. "I have a hypothetical situation." I began, my voice too calm. "Someone forged a property transfer signature." "What happens now?" He exhaled low and serious. "Hypothetically, that's a felony. And if the rightful owner finds out, they should document everything and avoid alerting the suspects until evidence is secure. If you're the sole owner, they have no rights. None." His certainty steadied something in me. I thanked him and hung up before emotion could break through. The living room felt colder when I re-entered it. I checked my bank account again, new failed attempts to access my credit. My pulse quickened as I pressed call on the bank's fraud department. Mark, speaking a warm, competent voice, answered. "This is Tessa Marlowe," I said. "Someone's trying to open credit lines under my name." "Well," he replied, voice tightening, "you're right. There were 2 attempts rejected this week, both tied to your property address." I gripped the counter. "Using my social, yes. But the employment verification didn't match. Whoever did this used forged pay stubs." My stomach twisted. My parents didn't even know where to find my pay stubs, but Rowan Hale did. "Has anyone else called on my behalf?" I asked. Mark hesitated. A man claiming to be your financial advocate. I declined to speak with him. I thanked him and ended the call, heart-pounding. They weren't just stealing from me. They were preparing for a future in which I didn't exist at all. I walked back toward the hallway, drawn to the locked closet like a gravitational pull. The faint whirring noise from earlier had gone silent now. A metallic stillness lingered instead, like the aftertaste of destruction. But before I even thought about prying that lock open, I headed into the master bedroom. A nightstand drawer sat ajar. Inside was a torn label. Draft documents keep with closet files. I took a photo of it, then shut the drawer gently. Every detail counted now. My phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. Open house in 3 days. Move faster. My breath hitched. Someone was watching everything. I stepped away from the bedroom and went into the spare room, the one Lily once claimed as her creative space. Clothes were piled everywhere, makeup open on the desk. A crumpled paper lay on top, a checklist titled, Lily's Transition Goals. One bullet read, Move into master bedroom by January 5th. They didn't even hide their intentions. I backed out of the room and steadied myself in the hallway. I'd expected betrayal, but not conspiracy, not planning, not the erasure of my life laid out like a project timeline. The air felt thinner as I walked downstairs, my boots echoing softly on the hardwood. I locked the front door behind me and stepped into the cold afternoon air, a gust of winter cutting across my face. I whispered to myself, "They think I won't fight." I tightened my grip on my keys. They're wrong. By dawn, my phone was already vibrating itself across the table. Notifications stacked one on top of another, tags, comments, mentions. I forced myself to look. Lily had posted a glossy video montage of her Christmas transformation journey, complete with drone shots of the retreat and slow-motion clips of her laughing beside a pool I'd unwillingly funded. She ended the video with a wink and the caption, "Some of us are just meant for more." The words hit me with an old familiar sting. But something in me had changed. Instead of shrinking, I felt my spine straighten. Then came the post that made my breath freeze. A clip of my parents toasting mimosas. My mother said brightly, "Our Lily deserves the world," my father added. "Some people just aren't meant for greatness. It's not their path." They clinked glasses like they weren't talking about their other daughter, like I wasn't real. I watched them sip champagne bought with my credit card and realized the bond I'd been trying to salvage my whole life had never existed on their side. A call buzzed in blocked number. Against my instincts, I answered. "What now?" My father slurred. "We're relaxing. Don't ruin Lily's breakthrough. I didn't authorize any of those charges." "Oh, please," he said, annoyed. "You make good money." "And Lily's boyfriend?" I asked coolly. "Why is he on the trip? He provides creative support," my mother chimed in. "He's unemployed," I reminded her. "Well," she snapped, "you've always been selfish about your success. Your sister actually tries what I demanded. To build a legacy," she shot back. "We've decided as a family that the house will help her launch her brand." I went silent. My father filled the pause with irritation. "Don't be dramatic, Tessa. You wouldn't even know what to do with a house like that. Lily has ambition. She needs it. You don't." And then the sentence that finally severed something inside me. "What's yours is ours. That's how family works." I hung up. There were no more illusions left to cling to. For the rest of the morning, I sat with a clarity that felt cold but liberating. They were gone, far gone, wrapped in the fantasy of a perfect golden daughter and a life I was expected to bankroll. My value to them began and ended with what I could provide. I poured myself another cup of coffee just as my phone rang again, this time with a number I recognized. The real estate agent I'd reached out to the day before. "This is Ava," she said, her tone brisk, professional. "I reviewed your preliminary information. You mentioned sole ownership." I confirmed. "It's only my name on the deed." Then we can move very quickly, she replied. Do you want to proceed with a sale before your tenants or your family return? Yes, I said without hesitation. Good, she replied. Speed is on your side, Tessa. Every hour you wait gives others room to complicate things. The way she said others tightened something in my chest. We arranged to meet the next morning. As soon as I hung up, my phone buzzed again. Mark from the bank. Miss Marlowe, he said quickly, there was another attempt to open a credit line in your name. We flagged it. How recent? 20 minutes ago. I closed my eyes. What documents did they submit? Forged payroll statements and an intent to gift residence letter. My breath caught. Signed by who? Someone using your name, he said quietly. The line went silent for a moment before he added, This isn't just misuse. Someone is pushing aggressively to gain financial control over you. I thanked him and hung up, my pulse thundering in my ears. I thought of the folder labeled Legacy Plan, the locked closet, the forged signatures, the retreat's obsession with assigning resources to the chosen heir. This wasn't just manipulation, it was a coordinated takeover. I stood, my hands trembling, not with fear, but with certainty. I had let guilt keep me paralyzed for years. I had allowed them to dictate the storyline. I had twisted myself into knots, trying to be the good daughter, the understanding daughter, the one who carried everything quietly. Not anymore. I returned to the house with a new purpose. This time, when I unlocked the door, the air didn't feel stolen. It felt temporary. I took photos of every room, every corner. I documented damage, clutter, the ridiculous renovations my parents had made without permission. The house was no longer a living space. It was evidence and leverage. In the kitchen, I found another draft document. One of them had left behind, scribbled with notes about refinancing investor meetings, Lily's brand launch. I photographed every line. Then I walked upstairs again. The locked closet waited at the end of the hall like a heartbeat behind a wall. I rested my hand against the door. No sound this time, but the presence of secrets pressed through the wood. Not yet, I whispered to myself. Soon. My phone buzzed. Ava again. Schedule confirmed. I'll meet you here at 9 tomorrow. Be ready for things to move fast. I ended the call and stepped outside, locking the door behind me. Snowflakes drifted past the porch light, floating down in slow spirals, softening the world in a way nothing in my life had ever softened for me. I pulled my coat tight, exhaled into the cold, and whispered the truth out loud, letting it fill the winter air. They think I don't have the strength to fight. Then I walked toward my car. They're wrong. Ava arrived precisely at 9 the next morning, stepping out of her sleek gray sedan with the crisp efficiency of someone who never wasted a moment. Her charcoal coat-structured portfolio and calm expression contrasted sharply with the chaos I'd been drowning in for days. She didn't offer small talk. Instead, she surveyed the exterior of the house with an evaluating eye, nodding once as though confirming an internal checklist. Let's get started, she said. I led her inside, bracing myself for the staged perfection my parents had curated. Ava moved from room to room with the precision of a surgeon opening blinds, tapping windowsills, studying the lines of the hardwood floors. She didn't react to the lavender scent or the curated photos of Lily covering every wall. But when we reached the living room, she paused. "These are all your sister?" she asked quietly. "Yes. Any photos of you? No." She didn't comment further, but the softening in her eyes told me she recognized the kind of family dynamic that leaves people bruised without ever laying a hand. We continued the tour. When we reached the upstairs hallway, Ava noticed the locked closet immediately. "What's in there?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "They locked it before leaving for the retreat." She stepped closer, studying the padlock, her brows knitting when she noticed the fresh scratches around the latch. "Someone changed this recently." "I know," I said. "And I heard something running inside 2 days ago." Ava straightened her voice low. "Closets don't get padlocked unless someone has something to hide. We'll need to get it open." Legally. I'm working on that, I said. Downstairs again, we stepped out into the yard to inspect siding and drainage. That's when I heard footsteps on the icy sidewalk. I turned to see Mr. Halloran from 2 doors down, bundled in a thick winter coat, raising a gloved hand in greeting. "Morning, Tessa," he called with a warm smile. "Didn't expect to see you back yet. Your family told us you were barely around these days." I forced a polite smile. "Just checking on things." "Well, your parents talked our ears off before they left," he chuckled. "All about getting the upstairs ready for Lily and her fiancé. Said she'll be moving back in soon." Ava froze mid-note. I blinked. "Fiancé. They said the house will finally go to the right person," he added lightly, as though sharing weather gossip. My throat went dry. I nodded silently until he wandered off, leaving his words hanging in the frozen air like a smoke trail. Inside the house again, Ava turned to me slowly. "The right person." "My sister," I said, the bitterness creeping in. "It's always been her." Ava tapped her pen against her clipboard. "Then selling this house is not just wise. It's necessary." We entered the master bedroom, my mother's self-declared meditation room. As Ava opened drawers to check storage, she paused at one that hung off its track. Inside was a torn label, "Draft documents keep with closet files." It was empty now, but the implication was loud enough to echo. Ava looked at me gravely. "Whatever was in that closet was important. I'm certain of it," I said. She nodded and moved on. Before leaving the room, I noticed something behind the open vent cover. A small, sealed envelope. My name wasn't on it, but Lily's was. Lily Week 1 Action Plan. I slipped it into my coat pocket before Ava could see, feeling its weight press through the lining like a ticking clock. We regrouped in the kitchen. Ava flipped through her notes, then looked up with practiced confidence. "With your permission, we can list this house today. The market is strong. Vacant homes sell fast. But once your parents return, everything will become complicated." "I know," I said softly. "You need to prepare for backlash. People who believe they're entitled to something they never earned can react unpredictably." The truth of that statement lodged deep in my chest. We completed the walkthrough, and I walked her to the door, ready to breathe again. But as we stepped into the hallway, both of us stopped simultaneously. A faint sound, more vibration than noise, hummed from the locked closet upstairs. Ava glanced up, sharp and alert. There it is. I felt a shiver trace my spine. "I don't know what they left running in there." "Whatever it is," she said quietly, "they didn't intend for you to find it." We listened for several seconds before the hum faded into silence, swallowed by the thick walls. Ava closed her portfolio. "This house is full of answers your family didn't want you to have." I nodded. She stepped toward the door, giving me a steady, knowing look. "Tomorrow," she said, "we open a new chapter, and they don't get to write it." When she left, the house fell silent again, except for the ghost of that mechanical vibration still lingering in the back of my mind. I locked the door behind me and whispered into the empty hallway. "Whatever you hid in that closet, I'll find it." And this time, I meant every word. Ava moved faster than anyone I'd ever seen. By mid-morning, she had staging teams rearranging furniture, clearing clutter, and making my house look like it had never been tainted by my family's chaos. By noon, she took professional photos, soft, natural light pouring through open blinds, hardwood floors, gleaming rooms looking bigger and freer without the weight of my parents' entitlement lingering in every corner. At 10:04, I received her text, "Listing is live." 5 minutes later, another message. 3 showing requests already. By 10:30, my inbox flooded with emails, notifications, pings, buyers wanting tours, investors asking questions, a cash buyer offering to view the house that afternoon. The speed was dizzying, almost surreal. My heart raced, not with fear, but with something that felt dangerously close to hope. While Ava coordinated showings, I sat at my dining table and checked my email. At the top of the inbox was a message with a red banner, "Urgent medical incident regarding your family." My stomach clenched. Before panic swallowed me, I forced myself to click. The email described a severe emotional episode involving my father at the retreat, claiming he needed follow-up services immediately. A number was listed. I called it. A robotic voice played a pre-recorded script about unexpected moments during life-changing breakthroughs. No human. No details. Cold anger rose inside me. I called the actual front desk of Palm Shore Retreat, and a bored concierge answered, "No, ma'am, there have been no medical incidents reported. Your family is enjoying our signature clarity package this morning." My hands curled into fists. A fake emergency. A scare tactic. A manipulation designed to pull me back into their orbit. But I wasn't the same girl who used to drop everything when they cried wolf. Their tricks didn't work anymore. Showings began at noon. Ava handled everything while I stayed out of sight upstairs, listening to strangers admire the house I once thought might hold my future. Downstairs, voices drifted up the staircase. "This layout is perfect. That backyard is ideal. Great bones, excellent neighborhood." The praise felt strange but also right. The house deserved a family who didn't use it like a pawn. At 1:30, my phone rang again. Mark from the bank. "Tessa." "There's been another attempt," he said immediately. I closed my eyes. "To open a credit line." "Yes." This one included a forged employment verification and a letter claiming you intended to gift your residence to a family member. My voice dropped. Who signed it? A man named R. Hale. Everything inside me stilled. "When someone is this persistent," Mark added, "they're not just trying to access credit. They're trying to secure control." I thanked him, my pulse sharp with fury and fear. They weren't done. Rowan wasn't done. And whatever plan he had for my family, it centered around my house. At 3 o'clock, Ava's text arrived. "Third, showing done. One more to go. At 3:30, buyers from the first showing want to make an offer." By 4, as I stood by the upstairs window watching snow fall over the lawn, my phone rang again. "Ava, we have a cash offer," she said. Above asking, 7-day closing. For a moment, I didn't breathe. 7 days. They want it. They're serious. And they want to move fast. Fast. Before my parents could return. Before Rowan could escalate. Before any more forged documents could surface. I whispered, "Send me the paperwork." Before she could respond, my phone buzzed again, an email notification. I glanced at the preview. Wellness Empowerment Billing Department. My jaw tightened. They wanted another payment. I deleted the message without opening it. Then I opened the vent envelope, the one I'd found hidden upstairs. As I slid the papers out, a chill prickled up my arms. They were coaching scripts, Rowan's scripts, bullet points titled "How to Dismantle a Toxic Sibling Dynamic." Lines like "Reinforce belief that the sibling lacks vision, encourage parents to redirect assets to the chosen heir, frame objections as emotional instability," and at the bottom of one page, Marlowe residence transition plan. I sank onto the bed, eyes burning. They'd been rehearsing, practicing, conditioning themselves to believe I was the problem, that I didn't deserve what I had built, that Lily's future depended on stripping me of mine. My phone buzzed again. "Ava, offer contract ready when you are. You want to meet tonight?" "Yes," I said. "Tonight." I gathered the evidence into a folder and took one last slow look around the house. The way sunlight brushed across the wood trim, the faint echo of past footsteps that had never belonged to people who respected me. This house deserved to be someone's home. Just not mine. Not anymore. As I stepped outside into the cold, the wind bit through my coat sharp and clean. For the first time in years, I felt just as sharp, just as clean. I whispered into the winter air. While they're celebrating their future, I'll be ending it. and I drove toward Ava's office, ready to sign everything that would finally, irrevocably pull this home out from under the people who had never seen its true worth or mine. I arrived at Ava's office just after sunset, the sky a deep blue curtain settling over Boston. Her building's glass facade reflected rows of streetlights like small burning lanterns, steady and patient. I wasn't steady. My nerves hummed so hard I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. But I walked inside anyway. Ava greeted me with that same composed confidence I had come to rely on. A polished conference room waited behind her, the contract packet already laid out. A pen rested neatly on top as though it had been expecting me. "We can walk through this at your pace," she said. "I'm ready," I whispered. We went page by page. Offer terms, inspection waiver, cash guarantee, 7-day close. Each signature felt like a small hammer driving a nail into the coffin of the life my parents had scripted for me. When the final line appeared, my hand hovered for a moment, suspended between fear and freedom. Then I signed. Ava nodded once. "Congratulations. You've just changed your life." Before I could absorb it, she slid the finished documents into a folder and handed it to me. "Keep these copies. And tomorrow we begin the final prep. Cleaning, lock changes, utilities notice, everything." Her efficiency grounded me. Someone was finally on my side. Outside, the cold air slapped my cheeks as though reminding me I was awake. Snowflakes drifted through the streetlight glow, soft and indifferent. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, letting the reality settle in. The house was sold. My parents just didn't know it yet. My phone vibrated. A voicemail from an unknown number. I pressed play. A smooth, confident male voice filled the car. "Tessa, this is Rowan Hale. I believe we've had some crossed wires regarding your family's wellness journey. Please call me back so we can resolve this." I froze. Rowan himself. Calling me directly. That wasn't normal. Not unless something was slipping out of his control. I didn't respond. 2 minutes later, another voicemail. His tone sharper now. "Tessa, your family is in a delicate emotional state. You don't want to destabilize the progress they've made. Be reasonable." Reasonable. The words scraped across my nerves like sandpaper. I blocked the number. When I got home, the apartment felt too quiet. Even Juniper, my cat, watched me from the arm of the sofa with curious suspicion, as though sensing the shift in the universe around me. I placed the folder on the table and sat down beside it, breathing slowly. For the first time, selling the house didn't feel like revenge. It felt like survival. My phone buzzed again, but this time it was from Ava. "We have a problem," her message read. "Call me." My stomach sank. I dialed. She answered immediately. "I just received notice from the title company. Someone attempted to place a temporary claim on your property." The room tilted. "A claim who?" "A man named Rowan Hale insisted he had a verbal agreement with your family regarding the future transfer of the property. He attempted to submit supporting documentation poorly forged." My hands clenched the edge of the table. "He can't stop the sale, can he?" I asked, voice thin. "No," she said, steel in her tone. "He has no legal standing. But it confirms something important. He's escalating. Pushing harder, losing control." "He's afraid," Ava added. "Or desperate." I hung up and paced the living room, the adrenaline crawling under my skin like electric fire. Rowan wasn't just manipulating my parents. He was trying to gain real power, financial power, property power, and the moment I removed the biggest piece from his board, he panicked. A knock sounded at my door. My breath caught. For a split second, fear clawed at my ribs. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Rowan. It was Lily. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, blonde hair tangled from wind and panic. She still wore her retreat sweatshirt, the sleeves stretched from nervous pulling. "Tessa," she whispered, breathless. I need to come in." I stepped aside without a word. She dragged her suitcase into the living room and collapsed onto the sofa, shoulders shaking. "They kicked me out," she whispered. "Rowan said I failed my assignment. He said I wasn't committed to the transformation. Assignment. Transformation." My skin crawled. "He sent me home early," she cried. "Mom and Dad stayed. They told me I was too emotional, too dramatic, just like they say about you." Silence expanded between us. For the first time in my life, my sister wasn't glowing or adored or protected. She was unraveling. She rubbed her hands over her face, trembling. "Tessa, someone sent me a document. I don't know who. It showed my name linked to something called Marlowe Residence Transition. It said I was supposed to inherit your house, that you were being phased out." I exhaled shakily. "I found the same papers." Her eyes widened. "You knew I did." She swallowed hard. "Did Mom and Dad know? Or was it Rowan manipulating them?" "You tell me," I said softly. "You've lived with them too." Tears slid down her cheeks. "They told me it was for my future. They said you didn't need a home, that you didn't want one, that you were happier giving than having." "And you believed them," I said. Not an accusation, just the truth. She nodded miserably. I sat across from her, studying the cracks finally showing in the perfect golden facade she'd worn since childhood. And for a moment I saw not the girl who'd always taken from me, but the girl who'd been taught to. "Tessa," she whispered, voice splintering. "What did you do?" I took a breath. "I sold the house." Her lips parted. "They don't know. Do they? No?" Lily stared at me, stunned. Then something shifted behind her eyes. Not anger, not betrayal, but something quieter. Relief. She buried her face in her hands. Then maybe that's what needed to happen. For the first time since the nightmare began, I believed it too. But Rowan wouldn't disappear quietly, and neither would my parents. The storm was coming, and we both knew it. Lily barely slept that night. I heard her pacing the living room long after midnight, whispering to herself, replaying whatever Rowan had drilled into her at that retreat. By dawn, she finally collapsed on the couch, drained and hollow. I covered her with a blanket and stepped quietly into the kitchen to make coffee, my mind already spinning through the day ahead. The sale was moving forward. The clock was ticking, and my parents were still on that retreat, oblivious to everything. At 8:30, Ava called. "We need to finalize some details before the buyer signs the earnest money agreement. Can you come to the house in the next hour?" I glanced at Lily, still bundled, breathing unevenly. "I'll be there." Before leaving, I wrote a note telling her where I'd gone and set a glass of water beside her. She didn't stir. The morning air bit at my face as I drove, the kind of cold that felt like warning. When I pulled into the driveway of my nearly sold house, Ava was waiting by the porch, flipping through documents with gloved hands. "We're in excellent shape," she said as I approached, "but we need access to that locked closet. It's part of the buyer's safety checklist." My pulse quickened. "I tried calling a locksmith last night, but—" "We don't need one," she said briskly. "The police can do a welfare check if you report that something in the locked room is suspicious or potentially unsafe." The idea struck like lightning. It is suspicious. Something was running inside. And there are signs it was forced recently. Ava nodded. "We document everything. Let the authorities handle what they find." For once, I didn't feel afraid of involving the police. I felt ready. We walked through the house, Ava taking photos and filling out forms. When we returned to the hallway, she paused near the locked closet. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. A faint, mechanical hum, subtle but unmistakable, vibrated behind the door. My heart pounded. It's been doing that on and off. Ava's jaw tightened. "Call the non-emergency line. Tell them what you told me." 20 minutes later, a patrol officer arrived. He introduced himself as Officer Rourke, calm and methodical. We led him upstairs. He pressed his ear to the door. "Something's definitely running in there," he said. "Could be unsafe wiring or equipment. I'm going to open it." He cut the lock with professional ease. The door swung open. We all froze. Inside the closet wasn't storage. It wasn't old coats. It wasn't forgotten junk. It was a surveillance setup. Cameras, microphones, a live feed monitor, dozens of labeled USB drives, a small heater humming in the corner. And on the center shelf, neatly organized folders with names. Mine, Lily's, my parents. Ava inhaled sharply. "Oh my God." Officer Rourke stepped forward cautiously. "Ma'am, do you know who set this up?" My voice shook. "No, but I can guess." Rowan Hale. This was how he controlled them, how he kept them obedient, how he built psychological profiles that let him manipulate every weakness. A folder labeled Tessa Resistance Notes lay at the top. The officer lifted it using gloves. Inside were pages analyzing my behavior. Tends to withdraw when overwhelmed. Exhibits guilt-based compliance. Susceptible to sibling-based hierarchy pressure. My stomach churned. Another file, Marlowe Family Dynamics recommended leverage points. Ava covered her mouth, horrified. "This man wasn't a coach," she whispered. "He was conditioning them." Then Officer Rourke found something else: photos. Dozens of pictures of my parents taken inside the house. And Lily, even me, all dated, all annotated. "This is stalking," the officer said. "And coercion, and possibly extortion. We're taking this in." As he began collecting evidence, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "You had no right to open that door." My blood ran cold. Another message followed instantly. "You don't understand the damage you've done." Ava stepped beside me. "Don't respond." But the next message made my stomach drop. "Your family isn't safe without my guidance." I looked at Officer Rourke. "He's threatening us." He took my phone. "We'll add it to the report. This is no longer a wellness fraud case, this is criminal." As the police packed up equipment and sealed evidence bags, I stepped into the backyard for air. The freezing wind burned my lungs, but it still felt easier to breathe than inside that closet full of secrets. Ava joined me. "This changes everything," she said softly. "Yes," I whispered. "But it confirms everything too. The manipulation, the sudden retreat enrollment, the staged breakthroughs, the fake emergency emails, the pressure to transition my house to Lily. Rowan had orchestrated it all, and now he knew the sale was underway." My phone buzzed again this time, a call from the retreat's number. I didn't pick up. Let them stew, let them panic. Officer Rourke walked outside holding a sealed folder. "We'll contact you with updates," he said. "But I strongly advise you to avoid the retreat and avoid any further communication with this man." I nodded. When Ava and the officer left, I sat alone in my car, gripping the steering wheel. Snow drifted lazily across the windshield. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. Rowan thought he could break me, but he had no idea he'd just given me everything I needed to break him instead. I started the engine. It was time to end this, on my terms. The moment I stepped back into my apartment, I knew something was wrong. The lights were off, the air felt heavy, and the silence pressed against my skin like a warning. Juniper wasn't waiting at the door the way she always did. She hid under the couch, pupils blown wide, tail puffed in fear. My phone buzzed before I could even lock the door behind me. A voicemail from my mother. "Tessa, call me back. Now. Something is happening here." Then another, her voice sharper. "Where is Lily? She left early. We can't reach her. This is unacceptable." A third voicemail cut her off. My father shouting in the background. Then a fourth. My mother whispering urgently, "Your sister isn't safe. You don't understand what you've done." I sank onto the arm of the sofa, the messages looping until they blurred. They weren't worried about Lily. Not really. They were afraid of losing control. Afraid their coach, no, their handler had turned on them. afraid that the fantasy they'd built was collapsing. Before I could decide whether to call back, the door opened behind me. Lily stepped inside, her expression pale and exhausted, her hair still tangled from sleep. She held her phone in her hand like it weighed 10 pounds. "They're spiraling," she whispered. "I heard. They've been calling every 5 minutes. Rowan, too." She swallowed hard. "I blocked him." I looked at her, surprised. "That's the first step." She sank onto the couch beside me, clutching a pillow like a life raft. "He told them you triggered a destructive family fracture, whatever that means. They're terrified, but not of losing me, not of what he's done. They're terrified of losing the house." I closed my eyes. Of course they were. Not their safety, not their mental state. The house. I stood pacing the small living room. "They don't know it's sold." Lily shook her head. "No. Rowan knew something was happening. He kept accusing them of hiding things from him. He kept demanding they call you. I think he planned to move into the house." I stopped moving. "What?" She nodded miserably. "He kept talking about establishing a wellness base. Something he said he'd been promised. Promised by who?" My stomach twisted as the truth settled. They'd offered him my home, a place he could control, operate from, expand from, not just a scam, a base of operations. I turned away, gripping the counter to steady myself. Lily watched me, silently waiting. "What do you want to do?" she asked finally. The simple question landed with unexpected force. I'd been reacting, surviving, running. For the first time, I felt myself choosing. "I want to finish what I started," I said. "The sale closes tomorrow. Then everything changes." Lily nodded, but her eyes were wet. "I don't know how to face them when they find out." "You don't have to," I said gently. "Not alone." Silence stretched. She wiped her cheeks. Then my phone buzzed again. A new voicemail. I pressed play. My father's voice roared through the speaker. "Tessa, what have you done? They made us leave. We can't get into the house. Call us back. Now." Another voice chimed in, my mother, frantic. "Your sister's crying. Your father's blood pressure is spiking. They're saying strangers are inside our home, your home, our home. Fix this." They hadn't even returned yet, and panic was already consuming them. I turned the phone off. Lily let out a shaky breath. "They're going to blame you for everything." "I know. And they'll blame me too." "They might," I said honestly. "But that doesn't mean they're right." She sank deeper into the couch. "Tessa, I never wanted to hurt you, I swear. I didn't understand how twisted things were until I was inside it. Rowan made me believe you hated me. Mom and Dad fed it too. I thought they were protecting me. But they were using me." Her voice cracked and she covered her face with her hands. I sat beside her, not touching but close enough. "You were a child when it started. None of this began with you." She shook her head. "I don't know who I am without them telling me." "You get to find out," I said quietly. "That's the gift." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Snow tapped softly against the window. Juniper crept out from her hiding place and curled beside Lily, pressing her head against her leg. Lily sobbed quietly into the cat's fur. After a long moment, she whispered, "Can I stay here tonight?" "Yes," I said. "As long as you need." As the room settled into a fragile calm, my phone, now silent, vibrated again on the table. A text preview flashed. From an unknown number. "You think selling the house ends this, but you don't understand what you've started." I deleted it without hesitation. When I looked at Lily again, she was watching me with fear in her eyes, but also trust. Real trust. A trust I had never expected to receive from her. "What do we do now?" she asked. I breathed slowly, letting the truth fill my lungs. "Tomorrow," I said, "we seal everything. The sale closes. The house becomes theirs. And Mom and Dad finally face what they've built." Lily hesitated, then nodded. And Rowan. A cold calm settled in my chest. He'll have nothing left to hold on to. We sat together in the dim apartment until the sun dipped below the horizon. Not sisters divided. Not enemies. Just two people emerging slowly, painfully from the same darkness. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. And for the first time, Lily didn't either. Tomorrow everything would change, and this time it would change because we chose it. I woke before sunrise on closing day, the air in my apartment charged with a kind of quiet electricity. Lily slept curled up on the sofa, her breath shallow but steady, Juniper tucked protectively against her legs. For a moment I watched them both, feeling something unfamiliar and fragile tug at me, something close to hope. Today, everything would be finalized. Today, the house that had been used as a weapon against me would no longer belong to the people who tried to strip me out of my own life. I made coffee, got dressed, and left Lily a note before stepping out into the icy Boston morning. The world glittered beneath a thin frost, each breath sharp as glass. When I reached Ava's office, she was already waiting inside the conference room, flipping through a neatly stacked set of closing documents. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. The buyers arrived, a middle-aged couple with warm eyes and soft voices. They thanked me again for choosing them, for trusting them with a space they hoped would anchor their retirement years. I nodded, feeling a gentle warmth that surprised me. They weren't taking the house from me. I was giving it to a future that wasn't rooted in pain. The closing attorney read through the procedures, signatures were exchanged, keys handed over. With each page, I felt lighter, as though a chain was unfastening link by link. When the final document slid across the table, I signed my name with a steady hand. "That's it," the attorney said. "The property now belongs to the Jamesons." A soft exhale escaped me. Ava smiled, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. "You did it." We cleared the table, gathered papers, shook hands. Then I stepped out of the building into the bright winter sun and inhaled the sharp, clean air. My phone vibrated. A voicemail. Then another stacking so quickly that I knew without listening exactly who they were from. My parents. They must have returned home and found strangers living in the place they had claimed as theirs. I stood on the sidewalk and forced myself to listen to the first message. My father's voice exploded through the speaker. "What have you done? We can't get inside. Our keys don't work. They say we're trespassing. Trespassing, Tessa, fix this." The second voicemail came from my mother. Her voice cracked and trembling. "Your father nearly fainted. The police were called. They're saying we don't live here. Tessa, how could you do this to your family?" The third was Lily's name, screamed in panic, then cut off by static. I closed my eyes, letting the cold wind settle into my lungs. There was no satisfaction, not the ugly kind, just a deep, resolute clarity. They weren't losing a home. They were losing their grip over me. I didn't listen to the rest. Not yet. Instead, I drove home to check on Lily. When I opened the door, she was sitting at the kitchen table, her phone vibrating nonstop against the wood, unread messages lighting up the screen in frantic bursts. She looked up, eyes wide and fearful. "They know," she whispered. "I know," I said. "They're saying it's my fault, that I betrayed them, that you manipulated me." I sat across from her. That's what people do when the person they controlled finally steps away. Her chin trembled. "I don't know how to face them." "You don't have to," I said softly. "Not until you're ready." She wiped her tears. "I don't think I'll ever be ready." "That's okay." We sat there in the quiet, letting the storm rage outside our walls. After a long moment, Lily whispered, "Are you afraid of what comes next?" "No," I said honestly. "For the first time in my life, I'm not." She reached across the table and took my hand, her fingers cold and unsteady. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered. I squeezed her hand gently. "No, I just opened the door. You chose to walk through it." Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft, steady, cleansing. Later that afternoon, a call came from the police confirming that my parents had attempted to force entry into the house and were escorted away. They were not arrested, only warned. They were furious, humiliated, lost. But for once, their crisis didn't feel like mine to solve. That evening, I stood on my balcony watching Boston's skyline glow as night settled in. Lily sat beside me, wrapped in a blanket, silent, but calmer than I had seen her in years. Juniper curled in her lap. "I don't know what tomorrow will look like," she said softly. "Neither do I," I replied. "But I know what it won't look like." She smiled faintly. "What's that?" "Me living my life for people who refuse to see it." A long quiet settled over us. The city lights twinkled like distant stars. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a door wide open. If you're listening to this and you've ever walked away from a place that was breaking you, or you're standing on the edge of that leap right now, I want you to know you're not alone. Choosing yourself isn't cruel. Sometimes it's the only way to finally breathe. If this story spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories about reclaiming your strength, your voice, and your life, feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me for the next chapter. We're building something brave here, and you deserve to be part of it.